Meeting her obviously before coming here, and I have to say she's one of the most nicest down-to-earth people that we've met, and it's really nice that we have more and more female speakers coming in to talk to us about their experiences and about religion. So just a bit in terms of background. In 2008, Lauren went to Cyprus to report on the efforts of 45 human rights activists to break the illegal Israeli siege of Gaza by boat. The Free Gaza movement made history on the 23rd of August 2008 by sailing the first ships to the Palestinian coast in 44 years. Lauren remained in Gaza for 1 month, and it was a life-changing experience, which would lead her to later embrace Islam. Since 2008, Lauren has worked and travelled extensively, not only as an interviewer and a reporter for newspapers and TV channels, but also as a human rights activist. Her groundbreaking programs, Remember Palestine and the Diaspora, are widely acclaimed for shedding new light on the suffering of Palestinian people. Lauren Booth currently tours the globe speaking about her journey to Islam, and we're really pleased that she's been able to bring that here today, seeking to share the true nature of the faith with as wide an audience as possible. She also gives lectures on other topics as well. It's my great pleasure to introduce Lauren and hand it over to her then. Thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi.
Now I'm actually going to ask for that to be turned off because it's right in my face. Would that be okay? We don't need the screen up. We know it's Lauren Booth. Haven't we? Yeah? Okay, thanks. Alhamdulillah. Maybe I'll throw it in. Well done, mashallah. Okay, so Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I have been Muslim for 2.5 years, thanks be to God. And no one is more surprised about that fact than I am, I assure you, because had I walked into this auditorium 2.5 years ago and seen myself dressed in loose clothes and in a hijab, I would have said something like, "What did they do to you?" Or maybe, "No way." And my face would have been like this. Because I was not going to be Muslim. It was not in my life plan. I had a 5-year plan, I had a 10-year plan. We plan, they plan, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the best planner of all, so all our plans can change. And I'm just one of many people who are proof of that. But what I'd like to do today, if you don't mind, is just take you on my journey to Islam. From a place where I was a professional journalist in a world where Islam is maligned, seen as an organised terrorist organisation rather than a faith. And how do you make that step from a political family into that faith? How does that change of heart? The beginning will start as a child. Yes, I really am that old. Once upon a time, a few years ago, you'd hear people going, "No way," but that's stopped now. Alhamdulillah. My dad was a lapsed Catholic. What does that mean? It means that when he got very drunk, he would sing Catholic songs. My mother was what we might call a superstitious Christian. So she would never pray and she would never go to church, but she liked to hang crosses around the house to ward off evil spirits. Now what's interesting about that stage of my life in reflection is this. I always knew that there was a God. And some of my earliest memories are of being 5 or 6 years old and putting my hands together and praying. I would always pray when it was time to go to bed. One of my prayers I remember very vividly, because I did it every night for maybe 5 or 6 years. And it was this: "Dear God, please take my younger sister away." I realised religion doesn't work like that. So faith, as we know from the Quran, is inside us. God, Allah, tells us that He puts knowledge of Himself, He blows it into us inside our mother's wombs. But as you'll all be experiencing now, how difficult it is in a secular society, and we are in a secular society, to hold on to that rope of faith, to hold on to that strong certainty that gets vaguer and vaguer the older that we get, and the more that society impacts upon us. So, when I was about 10 years old, we started having sleepovers, my sister and I, so friends would come over and stay at the house. And I remember when I was about 10, put my hands together, my friend was there, Olivia. I said, "Dear God," she said, "what are you doing?" I said, "I'm praying." She did this. That sound that girls make when they're mocking you. Back of the throat. It's probably an Arabic letter. And she said, "Why are you doing that? Who are you praying to? Santa Claus, the guy with the big beard sitting on a cloud?" And I thought, I don't know what God looks like. And if I can't explain what he looks like, do I know God? And those questions are way too big for a 10-year-old. And so it was easier to stop praying, really. So I did. And I lost the hold of the rope of Iman, the rope of faith. Now, what did I know about Islam growing up in North London? Well, in the early 80s, there were only about 3 girls in my year who were Muslim, and by watching them from a distance, because we didn't mix, wow, it was racist then. I would feel uncomfortable repeating the stuff that left our lips then, but alhamdulillah, it's a better world now. And so the Muslim girls were over there, and everybody else was over here. But I watched them from a distance, and I made 3 presumptions, conclusions I drew about Islam from watching them. 1, I decided that Islam meant that all girls had to have waist-length shiny hair. Second thing I knew about Islam was that it made girls really freakishly good at maths. And somehow it meant you had to be a doctor. And I met a couple of girls here studying medicine, so you know what I mean. Maybe dentists as well. And number 3, Islam came from Pakistan. Now up until 9/11, those 3 presumptions were all I knew about Islam, and yes, I know Islam doesn't come from Pakistan. And actually, I'd be a lot more embarrassed about that lack of knowledge, except I travel every month to America, and those 3 assumptions are still more than Americans know. Half of those are wrong, so go figure. So then came 9/11. But before that, there's a moment that everybody asks a revert. Everybody wants to know, what is the moment when you felt God re-enter your life? When you felt pushed or guided or changed? When is it, Lauren? What's the moment? Tell us that moment, as if you can put it into one tiny instant. So I've looked long and hard at the process of change, and I do have a moment which always comes to mind as the beginning of a path. It's my beginning. And it happened in the year 2000. And I was sitting at home in North London. I had my first baby, Alexandra, with me. She was 1 month old. It was December. And onto the TV screens came a photograph on the evening news. And this photograph was so powerful, it affected me so powerfully, it was as if I'd been punched in the stomach and all the air left my body. And I'll tell you what photo it was. It was of a young man's back. And he was standing very straight and strong. And in his right hand, he had a stone. And that stone looked so mighty. And that boy looked so brave. And he was about to throw the stone. And what was amazing was that just 10 feet from the boy was a tank. And the tank was pointing the gun right at him. But wallahi, when I saw that, I knew that the stone was mightier somehow than the tank. And I loved that boy for his bravery. Because he seemed to be saying to that tank, You won't come into my refugee camp and hurt the women in my family today, not so long as I have a stone. Now that boy's name was Faris Oder, and he came from a place called the Rafah refugee camp, which I'd never heard of, and a place called the Gaza Strip, which I'd never heard of. But like I say, that image just stayed with me. And really that's the only explanation, that and the Qadr of Allah, that explains what I did in 2005. By 2005, I had 2 daughters. I think I'd already moved to France. I had a swimming pool. I was living the dream in so many different ways. And I had no business walking into my editor's office and saying the words, "Peter, I want to go to Palestine." Now you have to understand, in 2005, I was a columnist, but political light columnist. Sometimes I did about hairstyles, sometimes I did about selling a house. I did too much about my family, which I regret. But I definitely was not a war correspondent, a Middle East expert, or anybody who had any business in the Middle East. I went into Peter's office, my editor. "Peter, I want to go to Palestine and cover the elections." Now what I want to say is this: when Allah has a plan for us, you can go to the left or the right of that plan, but the direction is set for you. And all you'll do by resisting is you'll make life difficult for yourself. Peter Wright said to me, "Here's the money, here's the check, go to the West Bank and report on the elections, go for 2 weeks, you get 4 pages in the magazine." Suddenly, a few days later, I found myself outside Tel Aviv airport. I had 3 Arabic names on a bit of paper, and I had no idea where I was going or what I was doing. I was going to try, I knew what I was trying to get. I was trying to get an interview with Mahmoud Abbas, who was about to be elected leader of the Palestinian Authority. But I didn't know how I was going to get it. 3 phone numbers. I was in the Middle East. As I stood outside Tel Aviv airport, a young man came up to me and he introduced himself like this: "Hi, my name is Jamal. You can call me Jimmy." I said, "Hi, Jimmy." He said, "Do you need a lift?" I said, "Yes, I want to go to somewhere called Ramallah." He said, "No problem, I'll take you." He was a taxi driver, a Palestinian from Jerusalem. Over the next hour or so, he gave me 63 years of Palestinian history. It's like Occupation 101. I mean, that's nearly a year a minute, that's good going. Some of your lecturers would be hard pushed. I remember at one point we came out of Jerusalem. The roads were very wide and very modern, but as you get closer and closer to what they call Area C in the West Bank, things get a little bit shaky and there are checkpoints. And I remember at one point, there was a lovely road, empty on the hillside, and it seemed to be going in our direction. So I turned to Jimmy Jamal and I said, "I don't want to tell you your job, but why don't we use that road over there instead?" And he looked at me and said, "You don't know much about this, do you?" I said, "No, tell me." He said, "That road over there is for Jews only. If I take you on that road, we'll be shot dead in around 5 or 6 minutes. Would you like to go on that road?" I said, "No, I don't want to go on that road." He said, "You know, the joke's on me, because being Palestinian from Jerusalem, my taxes pay for that Jews-only road that I can't go on without getting shot." And a single word came into my mind, and it was this: apartheid. I crossed my first checkpoint that night. It was getting dark. As I say, it was my first ever night in the Middle East. And when we got to the checkpoint, Jamal said to me, "You need to get out of the car here and walk through, and another driver will pick you up the other side." And I was scared. I said, "Why are you, this isn't very hospitable. You're going to let a woman get out and walk through?" He said, "You don't know much about this, do you?" I said, "Tell me." He said, "The Israelis have given me an ID card for Jerusalem." I So I can never go to the West Bank. I can't go there. And I can never go to Gaza. And I said, but this is your land, you're Palestinian. He said, wow, you don't get it. I got through the checkpoint on my own. I got a taxi to the hotel. And that first night, I cried myself to sleep. And what did I see? An apartheid road system and one checkpoint. I wish that was as bad as it got. When Allah has a plan for you, you can go to the left or the right, but you will go in the direction of the plan. So the next day, I didn't manage, somehow an interview with Mahmoud Abbas on the day of the elections was secured for me. It was amazing. I'm telling you, the world's press were lined up. I got to go and see Mahmoud Abbas. Now, whenever you're negotiating as a journalist with a leader to do an interview, especially on election day, you have to go through many areas of security, right? You can't just stroll up to David Cameron. You can't just stroll up to Obama. So I had to negotiate with Fatah security. Now, what that meant was that I went into a building that seemed to be more bullet holes than cement. And then very big men took my bag, and they took my phone, and they took my coat. Then they said, get into this metal elevator. And the two security men who took me up to meet Mahmoud Abbas, 6'5", 6'8", Arabs with guns. Now I remember at one point, one of the walkie-talkies went off in the man's waist belt, and he picked it up and he said something like this: Now, listen, any of my Arab sisters, don't be insulted. That's how Arabic sounds to English people. And I thought, when I heard him, subtitle, "We'll kill the white woman later." Because I realized I had Arabophobia. I was scared. Think about it. I was in a metal container with two big Arabs from the PLO with guns. Of course they kill white people. That's what they do. But you know what? They say that a week is a long time in politics. And I have to tell you that 3 days is a lifetime in Palestine. And 3 days later, I realized that I would give my life to protect any man, woman or child I met there. Such was the love and affection that they gave to a stranger. Now perhaps at this point you're thinking, it's a bit political, Lauren. I mean, after all, you can go to the Middle East and eat falafel and not like Islam. It's called Israel. But there is something that happens to you when you go to the Holy Land. There is a reason why God tells us in the Quran, this is the land I have blessed for all people. Muslims, the word means believer. So all believers in God feel the energy of the Holy Land. But for me, it was the people that changed my heart. I remember I didn't have a coat with me, and it was January, because the Israeli security had kept my bags for extra security checks. And I was walking around Manar, and it was much colder and drizzlier than it is today here. And an old lady looked at me and she grabbed me by the arm. And she said, "Yalla, yalla, yalla, yalla." She pulled me into a little house, and she opened a wardrobe. And she took out a big coat. I don't know to this day who it was. Did she have a very tall daughter? Was it maybe a tall son? I can't tell you. But she put it on me. And then she got out a little case. And she put some jumpers in a case. And then she wrote down some writing on a piece of paper which turned out to be her name and number. And then she said, as she pushed me out into the street gently, "Salam alaikum." And I was standing there with a coat and a bag going, what is this? Are people really like this? Can life be like this? SubhanAllah. When Allah has a plan for you, you will go in the direction of that plan. In 2007, I was still working for the Mail on Sunday. I was definitely not going to be Muslim, and I was, I assure you, a very happy sinner. And I got a phone call that was very peculiar. It was from a man called Muhammad Ali of the Islam channel, and he wanted to have a meeting with me. I could not for the life of me think what on earth someone from the Islam channel wanted to say, but I came to London, went to London, met with him and his head of programs at a restaurant one afternoon. Now I want to give you an idea of the sort of person I was, because arrogance blocks knowledge. Arrogance blocks spirituality. They sat down. Muhammad Ali has a beard down to his chest. I've got a habit of measuring men's beards, by the way. Something you do in Gaza. When you speak about people, you go, how long's his beard? It's long. Don't say anything. You've got short beards, okay. You know, George Michael? Yeah. Yeah, not George Michael, probably. Similar. So I sat down, and these two men sat down. One of them, obviously, a very serious Muslim. And the first thing I did was this: yeah, waiter, a bottle of wine, please. You see, I didn't care that this man was practicing his faith, because this is my country, and I don't mind Muslims being here. This is what I thought to myself. I don't mind you being here, but if I want to drink and you don't drink, quite frankly, it's your problem. So if I want to have a drink at lunchtime, deal with it. So there we go. I poured the wine and got ready. Go ahead, tell me what you want to say. Now, Muhammad Ali is a very bright man. And he looked at me and he said, before we start the meeting, I do accents. Definitely not racist. It's just I come from an acting family and I can't not do them, sorry. Yes, two things before we start the meeting. One, the Islam channel won't be buying you that bottle of wine. And two, I can't sit here while you drink it. It's against my faith. Now, what he could have done, very reasonably, was go and sit at another table and not be with a single woman drinking wine at lunchtime. That would have been okay. You can be in a restaurant. This is the environment we live in. But he didn't. Something made him go outside the restaurant. And he stood where I could see him on a cold, wet London day doing this. Bit on his phone. And I had a feeling that I hadn't had since I was about 12 or 13 years old. It was shame. I felt ashamed. Why on earth had I behaved like that? This man hadn't done anything harmful to me. He was a man of faith, and I'd been rude to him. He'd invited me for a meeting, and I'd wanted to get drunk in front of him. What was wrong with me? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran says, if you feel no shame, do what you like. Go your own way. But if you do feel shame, then there is hope for you. That day I felt shame. I put the wine away and I never drank it. Muhammad Ali came in and he said something amazing. He said, we'd like to offer you a job at the Islam channel. I said, what? I said, you know I'm not a Muslim. He said, yes, we guessed. Okay. Again, my arrogance came into play because I had two conditions before I would even consider working at the Islam channel. I said, number one, please don't get anybody to talk to me about Islam. I like you people. How wonderful I was. I like you people, but it's not for me and I'm never going to be Muslim. Muhammad Ali looked at me and he said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows whether or not you will be Muslim and you don't know. I said, no, you got it the wrong way around. I know and God doesn't know. He said, no, certainly God knows and you don't know. I said, I know, he doesn't. He said, you know, he doesn't. I said, no, well. He said, leave it there. And the second thing I said was, don't ask me to wear hijab because I will never, ever, ever wear hijab. Don't make a hypocrite of me. And I think to both of our surprise, he said, okay, don't wear hijab. Now to this day, as far as I know, I'm still the only female presenter who's appeared on the Islam channel without hijab. But Allah knows best. You can go to the left or the right of his plan, but you will go in the direction of what is written for you. So what that job meant was for the next 2 years, I toured the world interviewing some of the great scholars, clerics, Muslim activists of this age. And of course that's going to start to affect you. One of the men that I met is a man called Sheikh Raed Saleh. Sheikh Raed Saleh is known as the Lion of Palestine. He is the leader of the Islamic movement in northern Israel, Palestine 48, and a great man. It was 1 o'clock in the morning. I was in Copenhagen after a Palestinian prisoners conference. I was tired, a bit grumpy, but I really wanted to meet this man who was going, the Sheikh, the Sheikh, the Sheikh. Ooh, everyone was excited. And I was like, And I'll just show you how Sheikh Raed Saleh walked in to the interview. He walked in like this. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I thought, what? This is the Lion of Palestine? Because I didn't understand that humility can also have a power. That humbleness is different to weakness. Dignity can have its own power. Over the next hour, when he spoke to me, I felt something flowing from him, which I now know is Iman. Faith, belief. I didn't speak a word of Arabic. He didn't speak any English, but I wanted to hear him speak in that unknown language forever. I didn't want to leave his presence. So fascinating. Alhamdulillah. When Allah has a plan for you, you'll go to the left and the right, but you will go in the direction of the plan. By this point, I was getting involved as an activist, which just meant that if there were protests, I'd go and protest against the Israeli occupation, and my family was starting to put pressure on me to stop. They're not your people, it's not your faith, it's not your business, you don't know what's going on. They really think you're English and they'll kill you if you carry on. You don't know what's happening. You have a family to support. This is actually one of the major things that I was told. If you hang out with Muslims, if you get involved with the question of Palestine, it will ruin your career. Believe me, nobody gets involved with the Palestinian side of events for a career. It's damaging. But then I got an email that would change my life. In 2008, around end of May, early June, maybe it was June, I got an email of 2 lines and it said this: would you like to go to Gaza by boat? If so, call this number. I had 2 daughters. I was the main breadwinner. I was living in France, as I've said. I had no business going to Gaza by boat. But you see, by this point, I knew what the siege meant. I knew it meant that 1.8 million people were being starved of their right to move, their right to travel, their right to even eat healthily. And I couldn't bear it. So I called the number, and a man answered the phone like this: hello, this is Osama. I thought, blimey. I'm not going to Gaza by boat with anyone called Osama. That really would be a career killer. Alhamdulillah, it was a different Osama. And in August 2008, I joined 46 other random human beings from across the globe in Cyprus to sail to Palestine. It was the first time that any boats had tried to sail to Gaza in 44 years. The last time it had been attempted from Cyprus, Israel had blown up the boats and assassinated the people involved. It wasn't a joke. But I just felt I had to go. August the 22nd, 2008, the Free Gaza and the Dignity left Larnaca with 45 non-Muslims on board them, 25 people, 22 people on each. And it took us 36 hours on rough seas to get to Gaza. Everybody was sick. In fact, the captain of the Free Gaza was so sick he was on the ground throwing up. That's not a good sign. Now I remember, you know, there was a guy from Al Jazeera on board, and we all looked very scummy. I'd spent a month on the boats by this point. I was, you know, it wasn't a... we were sleeping on decks for 4 weeks. And Mr. Al Jazeera came along in his nice suit, and we were all like, he smells fresh. And he gets on board and he's like, hi, I'm from Al Jazeera. We're like, yeah, okay, we get it, you're from Al Jazeera. We had left the dock by no more than the edge of this table when the poor man lay on the floor going, I'm dying, I'm so sick. Bless him. Within an hour, he was so ill, he looked like death. I remember in his lovely suit, he had a bit of toilet paper stuck to his shoe. He looked pathetic. But I'll tell you what, I learned a lot about professionalism, because every hour on the hour, he was making a report to Al Jazeera. His cameraman would go, you've got to wake up, it's time. He'd leap up and he'd go, hi, this is Hisham, I'm reporting from Al Jazeera, we're now from London, thank you very much, back in an hour. Oh, I'm dying. Allah, respect to him. 36 hours of boats going like this. I remember in the middle of the night, there is a radio you have on board boats, and there is an emergency channel which is only to be used if you're sinking, or if somebody else is sinking. It's literally an emergency channel. And suddenly, at 1 o'clock in the morning, it did this. Now, as I said, the captain of the Free Gaza was sick, so a girl called Jenny was steering. Jenny is like 7 stones soaking wet. A very good saleswoman. And sailing woman. The radio came on, and this was what it said. Free Gaza, this is Israeli Navy, Free Gaza, Free Gaza. This is Israeli Navy. Turn back. This is your only warning, Free Gaza, turn back.